Welcome to the next episode of
Happy History
with your hosts,
Jimmy Neutron.
Baljeet Patel.
And Chester McBadbat.
Today's topic is the gangs of the 1920s.
To start our show today, we will talk about the gangs of the 1920s and the role they played in society. Then, after a word from our sponsor, Snickers, we will finish the broadcast with a piece on the most feared gangster of the whole 20th century, Alphonse Capone.
During the 1920s, a lot was going on. World War II had ended, and the U.S. economy was booming, especially with the mass production and distribution of the automobile.
With the end of the war, American citizens were feeling hostile towards German Americans. Because of this, the 18th Amendment was passed, which outlawed the sale, transportation, and manufacturing of alcohol. This was called Prohibition.
However, this was hard to enforce because everybody in America wanted to drink. Many underground clubs formed, selling alcohol and reaping large profits. With a high demand for alcohol, the gangster system in each city took on the job of providing the people with what they wanted, a drink.
With the Prohibition, gangsters rose to a prominent role in society. They would involve themselves in illegal activities like gambling, bootlegging, bank heists, and other organized crime. With these activities, large gangs made large amounts of money. With this money, the larger gangs were able to pay off and bribe some of the city officials and policemen, which gave them a lot of power.
The large amount of money gave them access to resources such as guns, alcohol, vehicles, and other necessities to the crime life. They were also notorious for the ruthless killings and murders they committed to their opposition.
This opposition included other gangs, police forces, or even civilians. One way which gangs interacted was in turf wars, when other rival gangs would dispute over land or some other form of conflict. In the infamous St. Valentine's Day Massacre, 7 men were killed in a garage, causing the public to feel shock and begin to favor the repealment of Prohibition.
In 1929, fearing the end of the Prohibition and losing their prime source of money, mobsters met together to discuss their future and began to expand their markets to legitimate enterprises. Street wars became a thing of the past, and moving into the 1930s, ironically, they would see their power increase dramatically with their gangs being less visible to American society.
Now, for a word from our sponsor, Snickers.
Man, dude, come on. You're better than this. Oh, jeez.
Alright,
So
I got this one, alright? I got this one.
Bro, the hoof's over here. Why are you shooting over there for?
Hold on.
Bro, are you hungry?
Let me just... Yeah, kinda.
Dude, eat a Snickers, because you're not you when you're hungry.
Oh. Hey, you're right. I do feel better.
Ah, I think made that one.
There we go.
Alright.
Yeah, I'm feeling kinda good.
Hey, baby. Well,
Snickers satisfies.
Welcome back to the broadcast. In part 2 of our show, we will be discussing Al Capone.
as you all know, Al Scarface Capone was one of the most well-known gangsters of the 20s.
Believe it or not, Capone was very nice to strangers, and he would donate money to charities and to people in need. He also opened up soup kitchens during the Great Depression and provided milk to Chicago's schoolchildren in order to prevent rickets, which was a disease that made your bones soft. Despite being one of the biggest criminals in the country, he had good relations with the public, when he didn't murder them, of course.
Capone was most famous for his mob mentality, which brought him to an estimated $100 million a year. He led a group of gang members named the Outfits, and the Outfits made most of their money on bootlegging, along with gambling, prostitution, and racketeering. He was also the head of the Chicago Syndicate, the country's largest and most powerful crime organization.
Many people didn't mind Capone's bootlegging because the prohibition was in place and people wanted one thing, a drink. In addition, many speakeasies made profit off of Capone's smuggling, and they didn't have to do the dirty work. In the eyes of some people, Capone was a hero, but in the eyes of others, he was a criminal who needed to be put behind bars.
A fun fact about Capone was that he was known for sending flowers to rival gang members' funerals. At one funeral, he spent over $5,000 on flowers.
But getting back to the main story, many people and government officials despised Capone for being a cold, brutal murderer. He was never put away for racketeering, but when he finally was brought to justice, it was through tax evasion in 1931. Despite contrary belief, Capone never escaped his prison house, Alcatraz, but was released after 6.5 years. He later died from cardiac arrest in 1947. The document that you are currently looking at is a mugshot along with rap sheet of Al Capone when he was arrested in Atlanta. The document that you are looking at now was an inmate permission slip while Al Capone was in the Atlanta prison asking for him to extend their freedoms, allowing him to go into the prison inmate yard. This final document is a completed payment by Al Capone's lawyer for his final release from prison.
And that concludes today's segment.
Check in tomorrow for a special on the Hoover Dam.
This is the Happy History Crew, signing out.